Okay, guess what? It's 11:30 and we are going to stick to our time. So we'll watch it and see if anybody else joins us. It's a very small group today, and that's all right. We know this is going to be recorded. So if you're watching the recorded, we're glad that you're able to do that. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Christy Johnson. My title says I am the digital engagement lead at Region 9, but that does mean I do a lot of the instructional tech. And I am joined here by Chelsea House, who is also helping us out in the instructional tech world. And today our focus is really about integrating our new tech app standards in the classroom. We've had a big shift to the way that the tech app standards are worded. They used to be in grade band or grade bands, and now each grade has its own standards. And so we want to take a look at what that looks like and what it means to be integrating those into the classroom. We are on our kind of our hub, our site that we're using. So it's a bit.ly R9 Lunch 3. Be sure you capitalize that R and that L if you want to follow along and join us. But we're just using this as kind of the repository for all the resources, as well as, for today's session. So you can see here we are. We've got hopefully all the resources you could possibly need for integrating tech app standards in your classroom. We keep in mind we are talking K through 8 right now. And so, because that's where those new tech standards are landing, we'll try to address all the different pieces that fall within that, though. So, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn over this first part to Chelsea to kind of get us started, and then we'll keep moving.
Absolutely. So, the first question that might be in your mind is, well, what are the new standards? So, I'm putting them in the chat. They're also linked to the title of this section that we have on the screen here. But essentially, like Chrissy said, the style of the standards has changed from bands to grade level. They've also reorganized the strands, so you can kind of see down below the image of TEA that there's a of the five strands. So the new ones are the computational thinking idea, and we're going to go more into each one. But the other new one is data literacy, management, and representation. So the two blue ones on this screen are your new ones, and then the other three that we have had in the past. So these should not be as new to you. The idea of communication and collaboration has also been woven into every strand, every grade level. And there's some terminology that I'd like you to be aware of. So with assistance would be whether or not the student should be able to do this on their own. With or without technology indicates that you could be using technology, but there might be a non-digital way to be working with these standards. Um, the course itself that you would be providing these standards in, it can be standalone. So you can have a tech apps teacher, or you can embed these into all of your different grade levels throughout the core classes and other electives or other specials or anything like that. It's not required to be a standalone course. And just one more note on that, just like all standards for TEA, they do have the such as and including piece. Such as means a list of examples, whereas including means this is required to be mastered by the student by the end of the year. So what I would love to do is, I don't know if y'all have the ability to open up this link, but it is going to take you to this little card sort, and we thought we'd let you take a moment to explore some of the wording and some of the maybe some scenarios of the new strand. So if you look to the left and the right of the slide, you can see that it's a drag and drop. On the left side is going to be a standard from that strand. On the right side is going to be a scenario. So I'll give y'all a minute or two and we'll just kind of just grab and put whatever you think goes where at maybe at most a minute. So far, so good.
I feel like we need Jeopardy music playing.
I know. And don't worry about getting it wrong. We're going to look at a key in a moment too. So whatever your first instinct is more than fine. All right, so y'all are doing fantastic. Um, but just in it for the sake of time, it looks like all the ones that you've put in there are correct. So in a 1 minute span of time, you're able to get that many. So there is a key and also a template link uh, in the notes section of the first page. So if you'd like to use this with your teachers, you can. And then the template's a printable version. So feel free to make a copy and try this out with your teachers, or there's a more in-depth version of this that's a printable template. So just something to look at. But if we take a look at slide 3, we can see the key. So that computational thinking piece is breaking things down, figuring out the patterns, seeing creating your own patterns and algorithms, that creativity and innovation. We're pretty familiar with that in general as teachers, but it's that idea of being able to create something with the data that you're working with. Data literacy management and representation, think Google Sheets, think, being able to manipulate and understand what you're looking at when it comes to data. Digital citizenship, which is, of course, as a social studies specialist, my favorite strand, I'm glad to see it, is going to be that idea of not only protecting your personal information, but how you interact on the internet. And finally, the practical technology concepts, that's that idea of using the keyboard, knowing not to put baloney inside of the CD-ROM. My son has tried to put many a thing in where it didn't belong when he was younger. So, and then also just how in the world to keep track of everything in the computer. So file management, that's another piece that you may not even think about with practical technology. So let's hop back over to our main page. Welcome, Becky. We're glad you're here. So for the last 23 minutes, we're going to kind of go through each of those 5 strands and go a little bit deeper and give you some resources. So computational thinking as a new one, I wanted to provide kind of some thought processes for that. So the 4 pillars of computational thinking: decomposition, so to break things down into smaller pieces; pattern recognition. I think we do a lot of that in the lower grade levels in math already, but that can help with the technology and coding side of things as well. Um, and then abstraction, this was a new word to me. I actually got trained on this most pretty recently, and I was like, what is that? But then I understood it's that idea of taking things and reducing the complexity and finding the most important pieces, which I think that is a huge value for students, no matter whether they're messing with computers, working with reading, working with math, being able to push out the details that they don't need and work with the most important. And then algorithms, and we've probably heard that before in connection with social media, but it's just the essentially being able to create things like coding, things like that, where you can, um, I blanked, sorry.
It's really that
So
step-by-step
algorithms is
piece,
that,
right?
yes, it's that creation piece where you're building all of those other pieces together into something that you're creating. So I'm going to jump into 2 pieces that go kind of hand in hand with all 4 of these pillars. The first one is coding. So there's a lot out there, but I just wanted to give you a couple that I knew would be free or freemium. So the Hour of Code is a Google product, and that's basically going to be a dipping your toe in the water. They're free self-guided lessons, and you don't need any computer science knowledge in order to be able to work with that. And it, like I said, it is free. So, and you can search it and see what you need for your students, or even to help yourself get a little bit more comfortable with the idea of coding. And so you can see there's quite a few there already. They've got some that are also kind of put back. You can still access their older ones, but they've notated that it's an older one and may not be as helpful. Code.org is another one. That one has lesson plans as well as videos and assessments and teacher PD. and it is also a free resource. So the link that I put in there is actually going to take you to the teacher page. So it's got the curriculum pieces, kind of explains, it's got everything, not just, you would think this might be more of a middle or high school page, but they've got tons for elementary as well. And then also, the another thing I liked about code, I believe it had some career pieces to it. And then the more resources, you've heard of Scratch. I'm going to let Christy talk more about that a little further down. But there's two different links for Scratch. And then Code Combat is another neat one that is free. It's more of a gaming side of things, and it does have all the way down to the lower grade levels versions of it. But you can, that's the junior version. And then when you go to the one that's below it, it's got more of a choices on what to do. This just kind of jumps you right into that game. So it's got a little bit of everything. So that's definitely something I hadn't heard of. So that's one I hope maybe you haven't heard before. I always like to try to at least let you leave with one thing you've never seen before. So the only other thing on my computational thinking is this problem solving piece. And so that's kind of it's still got a little bit of coding to it, but it's got that idea of being able to work with encryption and understanding, breaking down codes, breaking down, the spy piece. They've got a printable version of things like this. Oh, let me turn off my.
You're good. Hold it up against your shirt. You're fine.
Okay,
Yep, you
so
can see
it's one
it.
of those where you can turn it and figure out the code from that. And so there are a lot of different links there on cyber.org that you can just specific lessons. It's not going to be a whole curriculum. There are whole curriculums as well, but these are more along the lines of just something you can do really fast to help kids with that problem solving piece of the computational thinking. And so I think there's four different links there. And then Blockly is a game that they can play to work those same muscles.
I think it's really cool just to break that down because computational
Hmm.
thinking sounds like it's very computer sciencey, and it is, but it doesn't start that way. It's really about their thought process. So I love that you broke that down into that problem solving piece. And you're going to see that problem solving piece really throughout all of the strands. It really starts with that computational thinking, but you'll see it in all the pieces. So that next strand that I'm going to dig into is the creativity and innovation strand. And it all starts with the design process. Um, Really, they've taken that design process from that STEM toolkit. So if that's something you're not familiar with, you can actually pull it up here at this first link. And it's got just the link to the TEA version of it. You can click on all these different planning tools and engagement tools and kind of see where they're coming from. But what we're talking about with the design process is identifying a problem, brainstorming and thinking about the ideas to solve that problem, planning, creating, and then improving that first creation. So that includes some other skills as well. Things like we have to test it first. We have to see it. Did it work? We have to reflect on the effects of that particular solution, get feedback, or even give feedback before we improve and revise. So it's that whole idea of the process here. Chelsea mentioned Scratch earlier. Scratch Junior is kind of the younger version of this. It is available as a free app. They get the ability basically to it's problem solving. Get this character from here to here, and then they put together miniature blocks of code essentially, which is a great way to kind of introduce this idea of problem solving, especially in a digital way. It also introduces that coaching. You can actually get the Scratch, the bigger version of Scratch, the adult, not adult, but the older version of Scratch as well to do some of the same things. There are some pre kind of done projects already built into that when you do that. So Scratch is a great one to kind of teach those basics here. Another place that you could actually explore this idea of the design process is through 3D printing. And if that's not something that your school has available, if you're part of our CTE co-op, we actually have 3D printers at the service center that can be checked out. But Tinkercad is a great place to kind of explore that problem solving idea. I loved this little article of all you need is, or this little idea of all you need is a what if, because that's basically what you're doing. If this is the problem, how could we solve it? And so Tinkercad allows students to create and develop something that can be printed then. It's a great place though, because what comes out isn't always what they expected. Or there might be some problems in the design, and it gives them a chance to do that whole reflecting what went wrong, how could we fix it, and revising those products. Um, that 3D printing doesn't have to be just for the purpose of 3D printing. You can give them a problem to solve, and then the solution could be something that could be printed, whether it's a missing part to something, a prototype for a project or product. So you could use that 3D printing in a lot of different ways. And of course, our kind of tried and true STEM activities. When you give students, and I just pulled up some that are from We Are Teachers, but you can find lists in a lot of different places. Um, Giving them those challenges. You can do this as young as kindergarten. If this is the problem, how could you solve it? Make a column that supports the most books, or use pipe cleaners to create a bubble wand. Kindergartners can play with that, and they can try it and test it and go back through that process of learning what that's like. Um, and so even though that may feel like old news, it's the same concepts. That's what we're talking about in these tech apps. It doesn't have to be digital. It can totally be hands-on. You're teaching the concepts here. So that's really kind of the design process. Another way to think of it is the engineering process. So you can find some other results or some other resources there as well. All right. Okay, this is still me. I was like, I can't remember if this is my turn or your turn. All right. Data literacy management and representation is one of those strategies or one of those strands that is added. It's new. It really has to do with collecting data, organizing, managing, and analyzing that data, and then communicating and publishing the results. Now, data can mean a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be digital. Um, think of it as your kindergarten, morning meeting time when you keep data on the weather for the month. That's data. And that's the same skills. So it is not anything new. You don't have to add anything. You're just utilizing the things that you're already doing. Google has some applied digital skills resources that are great for a lot of different things. I did link the collecting data in this case, um, just because I wanted you to see this particular one. But know that the applied digital skills has a massive amount of strategies and skills and concepts that you can pull from. Um, and so this is one example of it. You can also use that same thing for organizing, managing, and analyzing data. They have Google Sheet specific instructions. So you teach kids how to manipulate the charts and the data that come from those things. And so it walks through step by step, all the different parts here, how to format, how to add data validation, how to sort your data, all those things that they need. I'm sure similar resources are out there for Microsoft Excel. Most of our schools, like almost all of our schools, are Google, so I have linked those as well. But another piece of this strand is communicating and publishing those results. That communication includes collaboration. And so if you haven't ever used Canvas whiteboards, those are a really good option as well. The whiteboards here, you can just click on them. You can actually find some education specific ones, but they're a great place that your students can jump in together, whether it's a whole class or it is maybe you give a whiteboard to each small group. But collaboration is a really important skill that we're working on teaching our kids, and it falls in this area because it is part of that design process of working together. You have lots of different templates over here on the side that you could use to brainstorm. So all the different parts of that process could be done in a whiteboard. This works really well if you have like a Promethean or a smart board of some kind as well, because then you can actually manipulate the pieces and parts within that interactive piece. But it's also great if you're just working on Chromebooks or something like that. So if you haven't yet, Canva is free K through 12 for teachers and students. So it's a great place to build that in as well. My tabs are getting a little crazy here, so let's see. But that communicating and publishing could include other Canva tools as well, like an infographic or a presentation, because it is about doing something with that data. All right, now it's Chelsea's turn with digital citizenship.
Which I was so thankful Christy allowed me to do this section because again, that's that social studies brain I have going on, and a lot of this is a lot of crossover. So I'll kind of start with the common sense. I don't know if you were aware, I always saw the little check marks on things, but I didn't connect the fact that there is so much going on with Common Sense's website. They have especially that news and media literacy piece is available, as well as the privacy and the cyberbullying, but that misinformation piece. So that's actually new in our K-12 social studies standards as well this year, is bringing in and being able to understand what it is that you're reading, and not only understand it, but be able to process which that problem solving. Is this real? Is this been made up? And so there's a whole digital citizenship curriculum on the Common Sense website. And so that, and again, because I'm social studies, I'm used to looking for free. So this is a full free curriculum, and they do have it all the way up K through 12 as a resource. Um, and then that Project Zero, I'm just going to throw that out there for social studies. That's another thing that's it's got a lot of discussion protocols on it that can go along with it. And then I brought up cyber earlier, but cyber.org has so much available. So if you go there, and then let's see if we go to search by types. I found the full courses to be a little overwhelming, so I narrowed it down by activity. So that's where some of the activities came from near the top. And I know we don't have time for full curriculums most of the time in our classrooms. So you can narrow it down. There's a ton of things down there about cybersecurity for each grade level. So that social media, passwords. We did a really fun activity where we put in a version, not our passwords, but a password similar to our own to kind of see how long would it take for a hacker to break into it. I think mine was 3 years, and Christie's was 10, 20 years? I was impressed. So there are resources like that on the cyber.org. It's not painful. It's just a quick way to get the students thinking more about how to protect their personal information. There's also tons of cybersecurity, as well as computer science, engineering, science careers pieces on there. So if you have that career and technical education piece that you might support as well, they've got a ton of resources for that. And, I could have put cyber on all 5 of these because they also have the coding piece. They also have, the creativity. So just something to consider, as if you're just going to take away one today, I would say cyber is a really good one to go a little deeper into.
I agree. Both Common Sense and cyber.org have a pretty comprehensive list of things that you could use for this. So, which also then brings up the point that this is probably a discussion that you need to have either as a district or a campus on who's using what materials. Because the grade bands are a little more specific, your strands are now by grade. You get a little more specific, but these are the same strands all the way through. So you might need to decide these lessons go for this grade, these lessons go for this grade, just so that you're not overlapping and running into that. The last strand is the one that I think teachers actually feel the most concerned about because they don't feel like they have the know-how to do it. But it's really just the practical technology concepts. These are the 6 kind of things that the strands all deal with in some degree. The hardware and software basics of a computer. That's really just the pieces and parts of a computer, a mouse, a keyboard, a monitor, all those kinds of things, the memory on it. Digital file management. That one, it sounds big and scary, but there are some tools that we can use to help kids, learn this. But it's also just teaching them how to name a file. What kinds of files are there and where do they go when they're using a computer? You can start teaching that as soon as they start using a computer and a dock of any kind. Internet literacy. Now, that kind of crosses over a little bit into the cyber awareness, cybersecurity, that kind of the digital citizenship piece. But in this strand, it's really talking more about what kinds of searches can I perform? Where can I get information? It's more about how it works than it is on the appropriateness of using those things. Digital communication and collaboration tools. Again, You see the crossover here. So yes, we're teaching them about it in this strand, but they're using it in the design process in another strand in creativity and innovation or in computational thinking. So these they all blend together very nicely. It's not that you're teaching these in isolation. Um, Basic troubleshooting and problem solving, of course, it advances as they get older, but learning some basic ideas of what might not be working, what might be wrong. And then that big one, keyboarding, right? If we're going to teach our kids to use these devices early on, then they need to learn the proper way to use them, including keyboarding. A couple of resources. Again, this is another common sense one. It was actually found on the PBS Learning site, but it's a lesson on strategic searching. So that internet literacy piece, teaching them how to search things reliably and safely, but also factually getting the right information. I included this little file management one. Now, I love this. It comes from Avid Open Access. They're really just ed tips, but the cool part is there are a lot of the ed tips, and they would work great for little mini lessons when you're about to do something. So maybe you're doing a project or an assignment. You do a quick little mini video on how to save files correctly or where you're saving things, and then you do your lesson. So you're embedding that, but you're moving through it pretty quickly. You're not taking a whole day or a whole lesson to teach them this. And I love that. And there's lots of these little ed tips on this site that you can use. And it makes it just easy, little mini lessons. And I thought that was a good concept. Now, typing in the keyboarding, there are so many different options out there. A lot of them are freemium. So there's going to be a free version that your kids can interact with immediately, but you probably, if you're using the free version, you probably won't have any tracking access. You won't know the progress that they're making or anything like that. So it really just depends on how you're using that keyboarding time. Do you want them just to practice, or do you really want to track their progress on it? Because that may depend on whether or not you're purchasing something or not. I just included several different options here that they could use. And like I said, I think all three of these have a free versus a paid version. And really the difference comes down to whether you want to set it up as a class so you can monitor it, or you just want them to have the practice time. So we did include a few other additional resources. TEA has these K through 8 tech apps, TEKS, that are editable spreadsheets. They include the I can statements. So it's just a great way to help you build your lesson plans out so that you know when you're building these different skills and strategies into your lesson plans. I went ahead and included the PBS learning media just because I didn't have a link anywhere else above that was straight to the PBS piece. Kind of like the Common Sense, it has a lot of materials that you could use that are lessons for all grades. They're free. I also included this little brain pop. A lot of us are used to brain pop as a um, brain break type thing, but they also have little videos on things like internet safety or parts of the computer. So it would fit really well with that last strand about the practical technology piece. But they also had computational thinking, and these are search terms and coding. So there's a lot of things that you could utilize here to help support those pieces that you're doing in the classroom. So, okay. So guess what? We did it in 30 minutes. Chelsea, we did it.
We did.
Okay.
I feel like
Um,
I'm gonna leave that password strength test in the chat now that
oh,
we're
thank
done, so
you.
everybody can try it out.
Yes,
And I wanted to say one
absolutely.
other thing. So I'm not tech savvy, but man, some of these I am excited to work on myself. So maybe not only this is beneficial for our students, but maybe some of our teachers can get something out of the Google Sheets. For me specifically, I know file management can sometimes be a real booger for some of our teachers as well, trying to find
I
something after they've created it.
absolutely. I mean, I think that's a good point, is that technology changes so fast that sometimes teachers don't have time to keep up with all the details and the pieces and the parts. We know what gets the job done, but we don't know all the things it could do. So I think this is a great way for us to really grow that knowledge as well. So that's a really good point. All right. With that being said, we are at the end of our time together. If you have any questions, feel free to email us. We will do our best to find the answers for you. This isn't something that's because it's new. It's not something we've taught in the classroom, but we're happy to help find resources, tools, information, that kind of thing. So, all right. Well, it is raining here, so you guys stay safe, and we'll see you soon.